Pokémon Stadium, the place to prove you're the ultimate Pokémon trainer. You can upload your Game Boy Pokémon onto your N64, then for the first time ever, battle in 3D.
Then a conquering hero is raised to victory. Sky high.
Rated E for everyone.
Our sprites come to life to battle it out in 3D. Incredible battles, mini-games, and much more. This is Pokémon Stadium for the N64. Welcome folks, I'm Livvvid. Released in North America on March 6, 2000, Pokémon Stadium wasn't technically the first Stadium game. A few years prior, Pokémon Stadium was released in Japan. It was a very much unfinished game, and even intended for the 64DD, which was a failed peripheral for the N64. Pokémon Stadium also only had 40 of the original 151 Pokémon from Generation 1. While praised for its incredible graphics for the time and use of the N64 transfer pack, Pokémon Stadium was also criticized for its lack of content beyond battling. Just a year later, Pokémon Stadium 2 was released in Japan and released as Pokémon Stadium everywhere else. While Pokémon Snap was the first 3D Pokémon game on the N64 in the West, Pokémon Stadium was different because it was emulating the turn-based battle style of the handheld games, Pokémon Red, Blue, and Yellow. In addition to that, it utilized the N64 transfer pack, which meant you could use your Pokémon from the handheld games and battle with them. Your Pokémon's nicknames, moves you selected, everything else about them was there. While I still love the animations they were able to pull off with sprites and graphics on the handheld, Pokémon Stadium made it feel much more real and grand. Pokémon Snap was a fun spin-off game where you took pictures. Pokémon Stadium was where you got back to the core mechanics of the games and slugged it out in 3D. Let's get my bias out of the way. I was 9 years old when this game came out, and still very much entrenched in Pokemania. By the time Stadium came out, I had tons of Pokemon on my handheld games, and it was time to watch my Pokemon come alive for the first time. If you were a kid at the time of Stadium's release, this was a total revolution on how we played Pokemon. I think these animations still show a lot of personality and scale even in current day. The contemporary experience is also probably not something that could be recreated today. When you were playing on your Game Boy, there was never any promise you'd see your Pokemon in 3D on a big screen. When Stadium came out and we were introduced to the transfer pack, it was a feeling of, wait, we can do that? I don't think kids today would be blown away by transferring their Pokemon from Go to Scarlet and Violet. To them, I think it would probably be expected. Although I have fond memories of this game, and that needed to be said, I'm going to try to be objective. There is also something that needs to be established up front. I'm playing the Nintendo Switch Online port of this game, which is just a port, but has higher resolution. I do have my original hardware, including my transfer pack and even an HDMI converter to show my gameplay from the original hardware. But I've decided to play on Switch for a few reasons. The first being that a higher resolution is much more noticeable, and because I use my gameplay for these videos, I wanted a better presentation. The second is that there's no transfer features for the Switch version because there's no way to play Red, Blue, and Yellow on Switch and transfer your Pokemon back and forth. I have a few opinions on why we don't have those games for the Switch yet, as a collector's bundle or something, but that's for another time. One of the goals of my video is I want people to play these games again, or even for the first time. Getting hold of an N64 complete with transfer pack, a cable converter to HDMI for most newer TVs, a Generation 1 game with a working battery, is difficult to track down and expensive now. I believe the realistic way to play for most people these days is the Switch. So this video will be a look into playing it in isolation. I will still talk about some of the transfer features and highlight why they were awesome. I'm willing to go back and use all of my original hardware, transfer features, and maybe even do a fun challenge involving all of that. But that's a pretty big project, so if it's something you'd like to see, please like, comment, and subscribe. It's the best way to say, hey, I'd like that. Alright, let's get started. There isn't really a story to this game. Your character portrait is a generic portrait that looks kind of similar to something you'd see from the main character in the handheld games. Really, the goal of this game is to battle. Battling in all sorts of scenarios and rule sets in the new 3D realm. You're given a map screen with various locations to visit, like different battle stages, mini games, playing your handhelds on the big screen via your transfer pack, and even a trophy room. If we are not going to transfer Pokemon in from the other handheld games, what are we going to use? That's where rental Pokemon come in. Stadium would be the first game to offer rental Pokemon. They were Pokemon with predetermined movesets and stats. You selected a team of 6 from the rental pool and usually picked 3 of those during each battle. You'd want to pick various different Pokemon to cover all different types and situations. And this is probably the first point of contention I'll get with many people who have played the games. Many of these rental Pokemon are terrible. Their moves make absolutely no sense. A Rattata will know Blizzard and Thunder, but why? Its stats are so bad with the special rating, which is what determines if those moves will be powerful. But as I played through the various areas of this game again, it became clear to me that some of this seemed intentional. Evolved Pokemon have higher stats than their predecessors. This makes sense as the idea is that your Pokemon are growing and becoming stronger. However, when renting Pokemon, it's not about just getting the strongest Pokemon available from a family tree. The game offers you prior evolutions as well. But why would you want them? Aren't their stats worse? The answer is yes, but the developers made a trade-off. You'll often find the prior evolution Pokemon with balanced moves which are both powerful and accurate. Meanwhile, powerful evolved Pokemon obviously have better stats, but its moves are less accurate, more situational, or just make no sense. Here's a good example. Charmander in Charizard. Charmander will eventually evolve into Charizard as it grows. And look at these stat changes. But it's here where we see the trade-off. Charmander knows Flamethrower, which is a great move that is both powerful and accurate. Charizard knows Fire Blast, which is a badass move that is more powerful than Flamethrower, but is way less accurate. I'll talk about it a bit later, but accuracy in these games seems even less accurate than it should be, so anything with more accuracy is usually superior. Then Charizard also knows Swords Dance, which ups a Pokemon's attack stat. But for this particular moveset, in Generation 1, that means Charizard is only benefiting from that when it uses Fly. That's a very niche situation. Fly is a decent move, but you're not taking a Charizard to primarily use Fly. Then back to Charmander. It has Dig, which can help it with other types of Pokemon and is accurate. Slash is also a decent move with a higher chance to critical hit for extra damage. As I played this game, I felt the roster of rental Pokemon started to make sense to me. You could take the higher evolved Pokemon with better stats if you wanted to accept the risks that went with it. Or you could take the weaker Pokemon with more consistent moves. And consistency is the primary thing you're looking for in this game. Look, I don't have proof, but the RNG in this game is infuriating and sometimes feels like the game is just cheating. In my personal experience, the CPU trainers can use normally inconsistent moves with only a 50% accuracy and land them 11 times in a row in one case. Then when you use a move with, say, 75% accuracy, it feels more like 30% accuracy or even less. As you challenge different stages and unlock higher difficulties, this effect seems to get more pronounced. I became infuriated at how ridiculous it was getting. This could all be confirmation bias, but even plenty of times during my gameplay on stream, chat seemed to think the gameplay was being really unfair with variance. So the best thing you can do to combat that is to take Pokemon with moves that have 100% accuracy. You need to entirely take it out of the AI's control when using moves, or it will just screw you over in the most critical times. While the RNG can be infuriating at times, I actually enjoyed learning how the game operated and it affected the mini meta within this game with rental Pokemon. I had to think long and hard about which Pokemon I was selecting because there was so much to consider. Going in and choosing all the powerful and legendary Pokemon may seem like the way to go, but not when they can't hit anything. Before we talk about each of the battle stages, I want to say the biggest thing about this game is atmosphere. What it does extremely well is sell the idea that you're battling with your Pokemon in a huge stadium with a massive crowd reacting to every move. The dynamic camera pans between Pokemon, goes in for close-ups, or pulls back out to show the scale of the Pokemon on display. But nothing comes even close to the added atmosphere from the announcer.
Taken down on the word go! Why? Taken down with one hit! Kapow! Major damage!
The announcer is Ted Lewis, but liked to get credits under the name Ed Paul. For the first decade of Pokemon, you'd hear him all over the anime series and video games. His voice lines from this game are seared into my brain even before I came back to play this game again. He adds so much intensity and excitement to the battles. I found a few of my favorite lines for you guys.
Give it a licky! Bone club it down! Soft boiled over easy! Oh, what a lovely kiss! It's catching some rest! Gone! It's a one-hit wonder!
I'm not sure if this game would have been nearly as memorable or nail-biting without this vocal performance. It created such a great atmosphere for the combat. Free battles are where players can battle each other or the CPU. You can choose different rule sets, use rental Pokemon, or Pokemon from your handheld games. This is where I remember the social aspect of the game back when it came out. I remember the first weekend the game came out and all of us neighborhood kids got together and were packed in one of my friend's parents' apartments. We played on a huge CR TV and were yelling at all the crazy action like it was a pay-per-view boxing match or something. The Pokémon Stadium location itself has various different challenge cups to win with varying rules and restrictions. You must fight 8 trainers in a row in order to be called champion of that given stadium. If you lose without a continue, you get sent all the way back to the beginning of that challenge. In order to get a continue, you must defeat an opponent and not lose a single one of the 3 Pokémon you selected for the battle. There is the Pika Cup, which focuses on the lowest level Pokémon. Our MVP here was a Lapras because even at a low level it had great stats and moves. The Petite Cup had higher level Pokemon, but they were mostly cute or smaller stage Pokemon that didn't evolve. The best Pokemon I had for this challenge was Ghastly. Ghastly is difficult to hit because it has ghost typing. That means most normal type moves can't touch Ghastly at all, and many Pokemon in their lower stages rely on normal type moves before they've learned their powerful elemental attacks. The Poké Cup is where things really start to increase in difficulty. It's listed as the official Pokemon League tournament in this game. There are 4 levels of ascending difficulty in the Poké Cup: the Pokeball, Great Ball, Ultra Ball, and Master Ball. As you unlock the new difficulties, your opponents start to use stronger and stronger Pokemon and probably start to cheat more, allegedly. The Poké Cup was pretty fun as it got more and more difficult, and also where I took my first complete loss in the Master Ball difficulty. It wasn't until we added the absolute MVP Electrode to the team that we could win in an absolute nail-biter. Electrode is one of the fastest Pokemon in the game and was great at jumping in to use Thunder Wave, which reduced their speed to a near stop and also sometimes prevented them from attacking due to being paralyzed. The Prime Cup is where things start to get a little bit crazy. All Pokemon are level 100 and their opponents are using great Pokemon to include legendary Pokemon like the legendary birds and even a Mew. And just like the Poké Cup, there are gradual increases in difficulty ending in the Master Ball difficulty. Once in the Master Ball difficulty, it came down to Haunter as our MVP. Haunter, being ghost type just like Ghastly, allowed us to avoid most of our opponent's normal type Pokemon who aren't able to hit Haunter, like Snorlax. The runner-up MVP was Tangela. Tangela may have been a bench warmer, but was always eager to cheer on the team when our spirits were down. If you know, you know. Shout out to anybody who watched the stream. As mentioned before, transferring Pokemon from the main series handheld games was a big deal at the time. You could connect to the GB Tower and could even play your games on the big screen. The GB Tower would even become the Doduo or Dotrio GB Tower after winning the Poké Cup Master Ball Challenge and the Prime Cup Master Ball Challenge. This would allow a feature that let you speed up your gameplay on your handheld, which isn't something you could do legitimately without Pokémon Stadium. This feature meant you could breeze through the handheld games or just train up your Pokemon quicker, so maybe they could be entered into the game quicker. The logic with transferring could be clunky at the time though. These different challenge battles had level restrictions that you could not exceed. But if you weren't keeping track of that, you'd miss out on using your own Pokemon for those battles. Say you already had your handheld game and your favorite Pokemon team were already in their level 50s. They couldn't now enter the Petite Cup because they were way too high level. The transfer feature wasn't all one way though. There were actually ways to earn rare Pokemon on Stadium and transfer them to your games like the starters, Hitmonchan and Hitmonlee, extra EVs, or Omanyte and Kabuto. These are all Pokemon you can either only get once or have to choose between in a single playthrough. So these Pokemon could really help you complete your Pokédex on your handheld game. There were some other unlocked Pokemon that presented a much more difficult challenge. If you registered all 150 Pokemon into your Hall of Fame on Pokémon Stadium, you could get Amnesia Psyduck. This was special because Psyduck cannot normally learn the move Amnesia. This task is much more of a time consumption than it is difficulty, because these Pokemon just need to be on your team of 6 when you win the cups, but they don't need to participate in the battles. Then there was the better known Surfing Pikachu. If you move a Pikachu from any of your Generation 1 games, no, it does not have to be the one specifically from Yellow, to Pokémon Stadium and use it in every fight of the Prime Cup Master Ball Division Round 2, you can get Move Tutor to teach your Pikachu Surf, a move it could not learn any other way legitimately. The difficulty here is actually having to use it in battle. You could teach it some great moves from your handheld games, but its stats are still going to be lackluster in the Prime Cup Challenge. When transferring a Surfing Pikachu back into Pokemon Yellow though, it will even have a unique surfing animation. I've never got either of these gift Pokemon because I never knew it was a thing back then. I think I'd like to do this for a video sometime in the future though. Maybe completing the entire Generation 1 Pokédex on original hardware and getting both of these special gift Pokemon. Let me know if you guys would be into something like that. Minigames are another feature to break up the pace and give an almost Mario Party feel to Pokémon Stadium. You can play by yourself with the CPUs or up to 4 of you on one console. There are 9 minigames with varying different types of games on offer. Magikarp Splash, where you play as a Magikarp trying to hit the counter as many times as possible before the timer runs out. I also think the AI cheats here too because it jumps before the timer starts, I swear. Clefairy Memory is like a Simon Says type of game where a teacher Clefairy will put on different dance moves on the chalkboard and then she hides it. Then you have to accurately recollect the song against the others, taking small hits if you get something wrong. It's easy to follow at first, but as it continues it gets more jumbled towards the end because you have to remember all these different dance moves. The Clefairy song is really cute and silly. It's a good time. Rattata Run is really straightforward. You're on a treadmill-like track and must hurdle over the jumps as they pop up, getting to the finish line before anybody else. Snore War is where you play as Drowsies trying to time the pendulum at the exact middle against the other Drowsies. Thundering Dynamo is about Pikachu charging up a dynamo by pressing A or B when it shows blue or green. Sushi Go Round is where you play as a Lickitung and try to eat as much food as possible. There are toxic food options that you must avoid because it will delay you. This one is really memorable for me as a kid because it has less to do with timing, and it's really funny with all the sound effects. Just silly watching all these blobs run around eating. Ekans Hoop Hurl is like throwing hoops on bottles at a fair. You toss an Ekans on these Diglets that emerge from the ground to gain points. Rock Harden has you using a Harden move on your Kakuna or Metapod to avoid getting hurt by the rocks. Dig 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 is the final game, and you just have to alternate between digging left and right with your Sandshrew. Whoever gets down to the bottom first wins. As you can see, most of these games are timing based though, which is where I bring up original hardware versus the Switch, and I must give the crown to original hardware. The input lag on the Switch is one of the most extreme I've seen yet when playing these minigames. It felt like a half second or even full second off from when I input my directions. This made the minigames completely unplayable for me at least if I focused heavily on timing. The rest of the game does not suffer from this because outside the minigames you're just selecting moves. You aren't trying to be precise with inputs or timing or anything like that. I had to find out if I was just an old terrible gamer now or if it was my Switch. So I plugged in my N64 to my capture card and I immediately started performing much better in the minigames. If you play on Switch, I'm telling you, avoid the minigames because they'll only make you angry like me. When you play in various trainer battles against the CPU, they often have nicknames for their Pokemon. Sometimes they're simple things like the names reversed or all lowercase instead of uppercase. But other times, you find some gems. I picked out some of my favorites to show you guys. Higglytuff, the Wigglytuff. Lusquirt, the Squirtle. Glurkin, the Kingler. Lickastor, the Lickitung. Moltres, the Moltres. And the even better nickname we found for Moltres, Moltrash, the Moltres. This became a bit of a pastime in my playthrough because it started to become exciting when I'd fight a new CPU team and I would look at their nicknames in pre-battle. Once you're done playing minigames and collecting stadium cups, it's time for the major leagues, the Gym Leader Castle. This is where you'll battle the 8 gym leaders, Elite Four, and Champion from the handheld games. While you don't get to actually see their 3D models or anything, you still get the experience of all those classic fights in a sprawling 3D battlefield, and to this day it feels awesome. Each gym tower is similar in progression to their gyms from the Game Boy games. They have a few underling trainers to beat before you've earned a chance to battle the gym leader themselves. But you have to watch out. Those underling trainers will have really random Pokemon, so when you're registering your team from rentals, you need to still make your team diverse. While there are many different stadium venues, the gym venues are really cool because it takes a little inspiration from their gym leaders and incorporates it into the gym design. The water gym leader, Misty, has her stage floating on water. The poison gym leader, Koga, has toxic ooze spilling out into the arena. The fire gym leader, Blaine, has liquid hot magma under his stage. I love this added touch because it not only sold the fight itself and the environment you're in, but also who you were fighting. These gym battles are tough though. You must battle 4 total trainers to get each said badge, and there are no continues. So if a trainer or gym leader defeats you, it's all the way back to the start. After collecting the 8 badges, it's time for the Elite Four and rival battles. The Elite Four are supposed to be the strongest trainers in the game. Didn't really feel that way, honestly. Sometimes matchups make fights, and these matchups just didn't pose that much of a threat as long as you have a good coverage. But the arena we fight in is truly awesome. You're at the very tippy top of the gym castle, battling on a grand stage. Once we've defeated all the human players, there's one more who has had its interest piqued. A silhouette of the legendary Pokemon Mewtwo will appear over the stadium as its very own stage. This is an anything goes fight against the strongest Pokemon from Generation 1. Mewtwo is so powerful, this is going to be a 6v1. It's a tough fight as you would imagine. Mewtwo is a psychic Pokemon, which was amazing in Generation 1 and almost weak to nothing. Even if you defeat Mewtwo, it's not over yet. You then unlock round 2 of the Gym Leader Castle and a second confrontation with Mewtwo. Both of those are now much harder than they were before. The Gym Leaders, their underlings, and the Elite Four will all have much stronger Pokemon for round 2. It's truly a slog to climb that hill once more. And this is where the argument about using rentals only and still having fun will lose some steam as your opponent's Pokemon really start to overwhelm the rentals. After defeating Mewtwo a second time, the credits roll again, and you unlock stickers from the gallery mode. Look, maybe the reward isn't exciting, but ending the game on battling Mewtwo is pretty awesome. Pokémon Stadium, isolated to itself, is a fun but sometimes infuriating game to play. I did have a great time going back and replaying it on the Switch. I think a casual player can play in the lower cups and still have a great time. This game was really ahead of its time. It wouldn't be until much later that we got the main series handheld games having battles that looked somewhat like this in a fully 3D environment. But since the more modern games now have these styles of fights and they probably look much better, I'm not sure if a new player would have the same appeal to play this now. Maybe if they wanted to go back and play in a Gen 1 battle setting with Pokemon and rules that would intrigue them. I will also concede I did end up missing the transfer features and got it in my brain to maybe go back and complete a Pokédex on my original hardware, including Pokémon Stadium in that challenge. With all that said, I still maintain that this game can be played in isolation and you can still find a way to have plenty of fun. That's all I've got for Pokémon Stadium. If you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. I can't wait to bring you more content. Thank you to my YouTube channel members, patrons, and Twitch subscribers. I'll see you guys in the next video.
What's next?